Recording in progress.
Good morning to the members of the press and our viewers. Welcome to the People's National Congress Reform Press Conference for March 1st, 2022. Today on the panel, we will have the leader of the People's National Congress Reform, who will be reading the statement. And as is customary, after the statement, you will be allowed to ask questions by the raise of hand, and you will state your media house and name.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Thanks for coming to our press conference. First, we want to focus on the PNCR's people-centered economic philosophy. Last week, in my Republic Day address to the nation, I stated, and I quote, "The PNCR wishes to make it clear that as your government in waiting, as part of the coalition, we will remove the burden of personal income tax from our people. We see this as an enduring obligation to you, given the current favorable economic circumstances from oil and gas. And I assure you that we will not stop working for your safety and security and your economic freedom and prosperity. We believe that this will benefit the Guyanese working people in a direct way," unquote. My statement on the removal of personal income tax generated much public interest and comments. Some have justifiably called for clarity and elaboration. At this press conference, I wish to use this opportunity to integrate the proposal with our party's larger philosophy of lifting all Guyanese permanently out of poverty and improving the lives of all. First, ours is a people-centered vision. As such, we do not believe, as the PPP does, in trickle-down economics. While we do believe in the private sector as the engine of growth, we do not subscribe to the position that lifting living standards must await or be totally at the mercy of this growth. Growth, in any case, is not an end in itself, but a means to an end. It is no use having an expanding economy if the less fortunate are worse off as a result of rising cost of living. Our people-centered vision is based on guaranteeing the Guyanese people a quality of life free from poverty, exclusion, inequality, hunger, and want. Our party sees these guarantees not only as constitutional entitlements, but as urgent moral imperatives. These are the inherent rights of citizens. Our people-centered vision starts first with a determination of what should be a minimum livable income, MLI. Mind you, I am not referring here to a minimum wage or a minimum income. I am speaking of a minimum livable income. This is the amount of money a person or family must earn to live comfortably above the poverty line in Guyana. In the APNU-AFC government, of which the PNCR is a part, I will task our economists to regularly calculate the minimum livable income based on costs of living, family size, geographic location, and inflation. Based on these calculations, the next coalition government will use the revenues from oil production and from an expanding non-oil sector to ensure all households earn at or above the minimum livable income. In other words, no household will be left below the minimum livable income. To achieve this goal, the next coalition government will consider and use several anti-poverty and economic empowerment tools. For the working people, those hard-working teachers, laborers, nurses, public servants, etc., we will remove personal income tax, raise the minimum wage and tax threshold, and provide salary top-up. So if a minimum livable income for a family of 4 in Linden or the Quarantine is set in any given year at $200,000 per month, and family A earns $150,000 per month, and family B earns $125,000 per month, then we will use the various financial tools to ensure family A gets $50,000 per more and family B $75,000 more. In this way, the APNU-AFC government, of which the PNCR is a part, will be using financial equity to achieve social equality. What about the self-employed and small business owners? They too would benefit from the removal of personal income tax and from the provision of business grants and other measures to ensure they earn at or above the minimum livable income. In our people-centered vision, we are fully aware of the many Guyanese, mostly women, who work informally at households, security guards, caregivers, and stay-home moms. We will ensure that they too can enjoy a good living standard. Let me therefore conclude this issue by emphasizing a few principles of our people-centered philosophy. 1. We will work to reduce and hopefully end poverty in Guyana based on a comprehensive anti-poverty strategy. We must ensure that people are paid a living wage. We must work to remove people from being the working poor to people who are properly paid for their labor. We will economically empower women, young people, micro and small business owners, and other self-employed persons. All Guyanese must be empowered regardless of who they are, whether they're the working poor, the elderly, the low-income families, children in single-parent families, frontline workers, residents in rural and hinterland communities, etc. We believe that the focus on the people need not wait the completion of large infrastructure, agriculture, and other projects. Giving all Guyanese a decent and comfortable life can and must occur in tandem with other development efforts. The PNCR challenges the Ali government to walk the talk on its One Guyana. President Irfan Ali is increasingly mouthing empty rhetoric on inclusivity and One Guyana. In his flag-raising speech last week, for example, he mouthed to the nation, and I quote, "This is our time to advance our future of a One Guyana," unquote. The Guyanese people by now are entirely unimpressed by such utterance from the president. People know cheap talk when they hear it. Under the PPP's version of One Guyana and inclusivity, they have been flooded with cheap talk. The president's One Guyana has already failed several key litmus tests. For one, the opposition parties were locked out from the very flag-raising ceremony at which Ali pontificated about unity. Secondly, the 2022 national budget was prepared without any attempt to consult with the opposition parties. Thirdly, the Ali government rammed through the NRF bill in the National Assembly without showing any interest in consultations. Fourthly, the government is ignoring all constructive criticism as called for by the President in his flag-raising speech that its gas-to-shore project is not the most viable use of our natural gas resources. These and other failings expose the PPP's hypocrisy and insincerity about building an inclusionary democracy, one that is rooted in Article 13 in the Guyana Constitution. Notwithstanding the foregoing, the PNCR challenges the government to demonstrate its seriousness about One Guyana by urgently dealing with the following complaints and issues. 1. The neglect and disrepair of critical infrastructure in several communities is a pattern that indicates political discrimination against communities outside of PPP strongholds. The PPP can, for example, fulfill their promise to fix Middle Road, Golden Grove. They can do the roads and bridges and drains in Beirut rather than rebuilding roads that were recently done in PPP strongholds. The PPP can promote One Guyana by giving contracts to people from Region 10 rather than giving them to PPP contractors from other regions and a small group of PPP cronies in Linden. They should also allow APNU AFC elected councils to manage the localities they were elected to manage. The PPP will do well to rein in its rogue Minister of Local Government who is bullying and intimidating local democratic councils to prevent them from satisfying the people's needs. Second, last week, February 26, 2022, the PPP launched a cleanup campaign on the east coast of Demerara. The chairpersons and councillors were not informed by proper central government channels, but rather by a PPP party operative. This speaks volumes of the unprofessional operation of the PPP. The NDCs were informed that $4 million would be given to all NDCs for the cleanup exercise, but only PPP-controlled NDCs received that sum of money. Opposition-led NDCs were only informed as to where the cleaning crew and trucks uplifting garbage will be placed, all of which are PPP-aligned businesses and supporters. Clearly, these are another set of corruption schemes to put money in the hands of PPP cronies, friends, and families. 3. The government is silent on the 2022 salary increases for public servants. This is another indication that there are two Guyanas, one to benefit PPP cronies and another Guyana in which those who do not support the PPP are excluded. 4. The disproportionate budgetary allocations for coalition-controlled RDC as compared to those governed by the PPP. On this issue, our Member of Parliament, the Honorable Ganesh Maipal, pointed out during the 2022 budget presentation, and I quote, "To further solidify my point about this double standard regime, the public must know the facts. For region number 1, a PPP control region, the allocation to the RDC under item 6211, expenses directly controlled by the RDC chairman and councillors, increased from 45 million in 2021 to 53 million in 2022. For region 2, another PPP control region from 16 million to 20 million. In Region 3, another PPP control region, from 12 million to 14 million. Region 4, a coalition-controlled RDC, the most populated region in this country, with almost half of the country's population, was allocated a decrease from their last year number from 21 million to 18 million. This is clearly a case of discrimination and evidence that there are two Guyanas. While we challenge the government to walk the talk on the one Guyana, the PNCR will continue to present to the nation its vision to give full life to the inclusionary and participatory democracy called for in Article 13 of the Guyana Constitution. The PNCR calls for higher salaries in private and public sectors. The PNCR has noted that Sol, a private company, has increased its minimum wage to $133,000 per month. This increase is welcome and stands in sharp contrast to the national minimum wage of $74,900 and the private sector minimum wage of $44,200. Like the PNCR, the company has obviously recognized that for its employees to live relatively decent in an environment of high inflation, a minimum wage in excess of $100,000 is required. Of note also is the return of international recruitment drives for nurses to work overseas. Clearly, the unattractive salaries and working conditions will act as a push factor in the decision of many nurses to seek and accept job offers in the UK and other countries. The PNCR reiterates its call for the Ali regime to provide adequate remuneration for all Guyanese workers. I thank you.
Thank you. Members of the press, you can go ahead and ask your questions by the raise of hand. Mr. Adam Harris, you can proceed.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Sir, my first question deals with the removal of personal income tax. I know Antigua did this, but I'm not sure that this is the case in other regions. Sir, are you in a position to say what kind of economic advice or what kind of economic studies did we do to believe that we can remove personal income tax even as we seek to increase minimum wage and the like, given the possibility of inflation?
Well, as you might no doubt be aware, the party is advised by trained economists who have done the work and believe for a large section of the Guyanese society, income taxes can be removed. Of course, when we talk about removing income tax, we are focusing on the poor and the vulnerable. We, as it stands, if you carry the threshold to say $150,000, a lot of people will be removed. And so there was a lot of work done. Of course, there is still the view that those who can afford, for instance, people who are working for like $1 million or more, they should pay income tax. We are open, we are discussing these issues, but we are set in our mind, based on the studies and the information at our disposal, that the large majority of our people who live in poverty, we can remove income tax and allow them to benefit directly and put them in a place where they can have a livable wage.
Mr.
Norton Denison Broad, I'm RW Top Radio. Sir, could you say how, based on your studies and so on, how do you propose to see Guyana sustaining low personal income tax and increasing salaries, as well as the top up after oil and gas are exhausted?
If you listen to the presentation, we said from both oil and gas and non-oil and gas businesses. Look, our vision to Guyana cannot be one that relies solely on oil and gas. Oil and gas, they have to be used to expand the other sectors: agriculture, agro-processing, manufacturing generally. Once you continue to develop those other sectors so that they generate income, it can be sustainable. And so one is talking here not just about using the resources from oil and gas to help the poor and vulnerable, but also investing in other areas that will make the society viable, financially viable, and can sustain it well into the future. So it is not solely a focus on oil and gas. Oil and gas will be used as the base for investment in other areas so that we have a diversified economy that can go way past oil and gas. Let us be very, very clear in our heads. The PNCR does not see the solution to all the problems in Guyana in oil and gas. What we see is a source of income that, if properly used, properly managed, if there is reduction in corruption that characterizes the present government, then those resources can go into other sectors and diversify the economy, build a viable economy. Let us also recognize that there are other areas of investment, human resource, investment in human resources, etc. And all of those can contribute to an economy with a much wider base and contribute to sustainable development in general, and in particular, sustainable financing of our people.
Sir, two other questions, probably interrelated. What is your current estimate of the minimum livable income at today's prices in the market? And currently, how do you estimate the removal of personal income tax and the creation of minimum livable wage? How much do you expect those to cost based on today's figures?
I will, at some stage, bring the professionals and let us give you the data on this issue. I don't want us to be speculating. The work is continuing, but they are saying, those that I'm speaking with, that at minimum, we can afford a minimum wage of $150,000 and still be sustainable. As we go along, like I said, there will have to be analysis of what constitutes a livable income, and then you take the decisions based on that. So if one looks at the last budget, one will see a lot of resources that are going to be wasted that could have been put into improving the lives of the Guyanese people. We haven't seen in this last budget significant investment in people in small scale agriculture, which is needed. We haven't seen significant investment in agro-processing. And so I am of the view that once we can do these things, it is possible. I don't want to get involved in the detailed economic analysis. Later in the year, it is my intention to outline a clear economic vision for our country, and that will come with appendices that will have the data.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions on the press release?
You had said 2 questions. I think he only asked one. This is Dennis.
Mr. Adam Harris's hand is up. Mr. Adam Harris?
Thank you very much. Sir, you talked a lot about the budget and the attitude of the government talks about one Guyana, but there are 2 Guyanas. Now, one of the things that I remember happening in the past with other governments, because you're trying locally, you've been complaining and all of that, and nothing seems to be changing. One of the things that others have been doing was taking the opportunity to lobby at every single forum they get a chance to. There is a Caricom Summit that opened today. I'm not sure, has the party attempted or did it try to get into the Caricom Summit, even if you are not a delegate or a representative, to lobby at the various external forums in and around the summit to put your case out into the region, sir?
Well, we have been sending to Caricom reps our position. As it relates to the Caricom Summit, a while back, particularly when Robert Corbyn was leader of the party, there were decisions made at the Caricom level for the involvement of opposition leaders and people in the opposition in Caricom activities. It is my intention to work to reactivate that and to have a kind of a formal relationship with Caricom. I believe, like that document that was produced a while back suggests, that there should be an institutionalized mechanism for the opposition to participate in Caricom activities. And I will work assiduously to put that back in place. I believe that we have been speaking to the government through our press conferences, through various means. We are at the same time mobilizing and organizing our people. We believe that the PPP has had ample opportunity to respond to the concerns we have raised, and we intend to take this to another political level. But we want to be sure that before we act, we must be satisfied that we use those channels that exist. And once those channels bear no fruits, then we'll be on solid ground when we take the requisite political action to have them rectified.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions on the press release? All right. Well, I guess I'll open. Hold on.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Dennis.
Miss.
Yeah.
Mr.
Dennis, yeah.
Okay.
A question outside the press statement.
Hold on one sec, Mr. Shabral. Mr. Shabral, just 1 second. You're asking a question outside of the press release, right? Just 1 second. Let me ensure no other media house has questions in regard to the press release before we move on. I see Ms. Svetlana's hand is up. Do you?
No, actually, I have a question on statement. So, Mr.
Okay.
Shabral, go ahead and then I'll ask the question.
You don't have a question on the statement, you said?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, well.
I have a third question.
Okay, no problem. Mr. Shabral?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Norton, what is your party's present position on the whole question of power sharing against the background of the recent recommendation in the report that was sponsored by the U.S. Agency for International Development?
The People's National Congress reform has a long time ago placed in records that it believes that the problems in Guyana cannot be resolved by one political party dominating and controlling. we believe that we have to develop a system of inclusive governance so that all and sundry feel they are part and parcel of the development in Guyana. In this regard, therefore, we are disposed to negotiating and talking about inclusionary government, power sharing.
You're having some serious audio dropouts, Mr. Norton.
Well, I
Mr.
don't
Norton, can you repeat your entire sentence? Because there are many audio dropouts today.
Are you hearing me clearly now?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm just asking you to repeat the first the last two sentences, because you missed.
Well, I can't remember what are the last two sentences, but I can try and go back what I said. I was saying essentially that a while ago, the People's National Congress...
We don't hear you.
Well, I don't know. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, I'm hearing. Proceed.
Okay, I was saying that a while ago, the People's National Congress reform committed to a system of inclusive governance and some form of power sharing. Of course, the details will have to be negotiated. We believe that with the problems we experience in Guyana, no one political party will be able to solve them. It will demand the involvement of political parties and all stakeholders. If you have a system in which when one party is in government, the other feel excluded and vice versa, then obviously we will not be able to achieve our objectives. But there are different definitions and approaches to shared governance, and we are disposed to talking and negotiating. But like I said on many other issues, we cannot dismiss the fact that there are a number of challenges to be overcome even before you arrive at the point of some form of power sharing. For instance, I do not see us getting into any serious dialogue if we cannot agree on a new voters list, a clean voters list. The basis of democratic elections is a clean voters list. And so even if you're going to share government after, if you don't have a clean list and an election that is considered credible, then you will still have problems. So there are a number of issues we have to deal with. However, we welcome the views expressed in the USAID report, and we are prepared to work to resolve the many problems we face in Guyana and to place Guyana on a course to prosperity with the involvement and inclusion of all the people of Guyana.
Thank you. Ms. Svetlana?
A quick follow-up, Mr. Norton. What's the latest with your proposed discussions with GCOM about having a clean voters list?
What is there?
What is your latest update? You did say, I think about 2 press conferences ago, that you had planned to with GCOM to discuss the issue of a clean voters list.
We will still meet with GCOM, but we haven't as yet.
Ms. Svetlana, you can go ahead.
Well, thank you. Svetlana Marshall, Village Voice News. Mr. Norton, could you say what is the party's position on nominating someone to sit on the Natural Resource Fund Board of Directors? So far, we've seen at least 4 different positions coming from the opposition. One, then the opposition as a whole, APN, AFC, saying that the bill is illegal, it was illegally passed, and promising to challenge that in court. Subsequently, the AFC, I think, would have indicated that they are going to participate in the process of nominating someone, and then the chief whip would have indicated in the Starbucks News that the opposition will not participate. Just Sunday, we had an article stating that the opposition has requested that the position be advertised publicly before someone is nominated for the position. So what is PNC's position on the matter?
Okay, let me say this first of all. Let us not see the two things as separate. First of all, we believe the Natural Resource Fund was rammed through the Parliament. We believe that there wasn't adequate consultation. We also believe that with the absence of the mace, it could not have been passed legally. And therefore, as far as I know, work is still being done to put together the entire case to challenge it. So we believe that the act has not been legally passed. But we are also politicians who live in the real world. The PPP is not a democratic party that will be responsive to concerns of people. So they are going to go ahead. Now, in the circumstance, we have got to ensure we have people there to scrutinize what is happening. And in that regard, we have agreed that we will nominate people while at the same time doing it under protest and signaling that we intend to challenge it in a court. Now, in the real world of politics, if you leave the Natural Resource Fund without scrutiny, one, you will be excluding yourself from knowing what is happening, and two, you will be making the ground much easier for the PPP to not only continue to expand its corruption. And so we are taking a pragmatic approach which says we will challenge it, we will argue that it hasn't been legally passed until a court decides otherwise. But in the interest of the people of Guyana, we will scrutinize and monitor to ensure we can contribute to a reduction in PPP corruption and to work towards the resources of our people going towards benefiting our people.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, Mr. Norton, last week, Tuesday, the government, 5 members sitting on the committee of appointment would have put forward 3 names. Mr. Clement Seeley, Ambassador Hamid Case, and Mr. Dunstan Barrow. What is the party's position on those nominees, given the fact that the boards are expected to be impartial and apolitical?
Well, the party's position on who they put up, that's what you're asking? The party...
Yes, what are the parties?
The party believes, and that is why a proposal was being made for it to be advertised, etc. The party believes that the people that are being there, that will be there, should be professional people. Some of them that are named have professional qualifications. Now, the PPP in government, they have the right to put whoever they want to put. Of course, it would have been better if they were guided by some principles which said the persons must be politically independent, the person must have the skills, etc. But that is not the way the PPP operate. So what we have to do is to put our nominees and work towards ensuring that they are professionally competent, etc. So I don't think it is our task to really express a view on those named by the PPP, except for the fact that they need to satisfy certain criteria that should have been set out and should have been done through application for the positions rather than mere handpicking.
Thank you. I see the hands of Mr. Adam Harris.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man, thank you very much. Common Leader, this week, I think it was yesterday, I saw a Facebook post by Charles Ramsey. But before I go to that, I want to remind that at an earlier press conference, you had said that you didn't know Mr. Su, and you weren't aware that the party knew Mr. Su. Now, Mr. Ramsden is contending that Mr. Su had a very close relationship with the PNC. He named Joe Barman, he named Simona Brooms, and he talked about Mr. Su funding artifacts of the PNC and all of this. Since his name came up, sir, has anyone in the party suggested something that would make you believe that the party knew or was close to Mr. Su?
There is no evidence that the People's National Congress reform is close to Mr. Su. I don't doubt there might be individuals who are in the party or were in the party that are close to Mr. Su. But the party as an institution, as far as I know, it has absolutely no relationship with Mr. Su. And surely, since I have been here, the first time I really heard of Mr. Su is with the Vibes Media disclosure.
Interview.
But Charles Ramsden has never been known for honesty. Charles Ramsden has never been known to be distant from fabrication. And so I wouldn't worry with what Charles Ramsden says. Charles Ramsden has to say what he is saying. He is seeking to defend Mr. Jack Dew, but it's already in the public domain that he has a relationship with Mr. Su. There are allegations against Mr. Jack Dale. They are doing everything to shift it away from Mr. Jack Dale, but the evidence suggests that the person that is at the center of Sugate is Jack Dale. Ramsden can say what he wants. He cannot change the reality. What I will urge him to do is to wait until the documentary is out and to see if he or Mr. Jack Dale will be exculpated.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis Chabot.
Yes, Mr. Norton. Two quick questions. I don't know what once one of them something was said and slipped me, but the other one really is what's the latest update on your eventual becoming the opposition leader? What's the latest on that? Any status update? And secondly, on this one, which I am not sure if me or not, is the coalition going to be nominating someone to sit on the NRF board? The government is you're insisting that we advertise, but the government's willing to go ahead with your process.
Well, I've already answered the last one. As it relates to your first question, on this question of the opposition leader, as far as I know, a member of parliament has resigned and the party has asked the representative of the list to extract Aubrey Norton's name to become a member of parliament. I wouldn't want to go past that. When that time comes, we will deal with the second phase.
And are you confident that this will work its way out to the very end?
I don't know what you mean by work its way out by the very end.
No, to the point of where you will eventually enter the National Assembly. Are you confident that everything will work smoothly towards that conclusion?
I think the party and the people of Guyana desire that, and we'll see how it goes.
I think I see the hand of Kenya. Miss Marsha?
Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
I see Miss Kendall Richmond.
Sorry, Miss Kenya.
I see
Miss Richmond.
Miss Kendall Richmond as a...
Yes. Hi. Ms. Richmond from Nightly News. Can you later say what came out of the...
Well, first of all, we had discussions on the international issues, and we looked at the present situation in the world, exchange our views. We have agreed to work in collaboration and cooperation. We have also solicited their support from, I think we had a good encounter. And we have prepared a base for us to engage each other in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Shabal, is your hand still up?
I'm not hearing clearly, but is it possible for me to go ahead with a follow-up question?
Go ahead.
Mr. Norton, with regards to the Natural Resource Fund Board of Directors, the legislation caters for only one nominee to be put or to be submitted from the Parliament to sit on the board. How confident is the party that the government, having a majority on the Committee of Appointments, will seriously consider the nominee or nominee who will be submitted by the opposition?
I don't get the question at all. What is the question? The question is not clear.
Ms. Marshall?
Okay, I'll try one more time. I think there's a serious internet problem because I could barely hear.
No, I'm hearing you, but the question itself is not clear. What is it that you're asking?
I'm asking the legislation, the Natural Resource Fund Act, caters for only one nominee from Parliament to sit on the board of directors for the Natural Resource Fund. I'm asking you, sir, how confident is the opposition or the Pncr that the government will seriously consider its nominees, the opposition nominees, given that the government has 5 members, majority on the Committee of Appointments?
Well,
the Committee of Appointments is responsible for nominating that person.
Well, we have submitted, as I understand it, there will be one on the Board of Directors and one on the Oversight Committee. I don't know that it's a choice. As I understand it, there's going to be one on both committees from the opposition. What worries me is the fact that it is government dominated. One can see a situation where a government is non-responsive. They're just pushing through what they want to push through. But there are some advantages to be had. One, be able to get the information to expose the government, and two, to work assiduously to make them accountable, even though you are at a disadvantage. If you have an effective one man on a board, sometimes that one man can be very, very effective. So we will do everything to ensure that our reps are effective, but we understand the disadvantage at which we started. We were hoping that it would be in a more professional board and that the politics wouldn't characterize it. Rather, professionalism and competence would have been the hallmark, but that doesn't fly with the PPP.
Thank you. I see Ms. Martha. Oh, that was a mistake because her hand is down now. Mr. Shabal, is your hand up or is it just stuck like that? Hello?
Mrs. Norton, I don't know if the other reporters in the press conference are experiencing the same technical problems that I am, because the last part